This 1970s backpack changed hiking, and inside it, I packed some of the most groundbreaking outdoor gear from the last 100 years. And for the next 2 days, I'm relying on that gear to get me to the top of that mountain, which is Mt Whitney, the tallest mountain in the lower 48. It's 22 miles round trip with over 6,600 feet of elevation gain, some of which is up an ice chute. And nearly half the people who attempt the summit never make it. Modern hiking gear is insanely specialized, but to understand how we got here, we need to go way back. Before Gore-Tex, Dyneema, and way before outdoor clothing became a fashion statement. Back to the mid-1800s, when the outdoors wasn't something you played in, it was something you endured. But around this time period, there was a shift in American life. People had something they never really had before: free time. People like Emerson, Thoreau, and John Muir changed how people thought about nature. What was once feared became romanticized. People wanted to explore. There was just one problem. The gear sucked. Heavy wool, leather boots, steel cookware, and canvas packs. Basically, if you wanted to explore, you suffered, or you brought your whole home with you. But as outdoor recreation exploded, the gear started to evolve. So over the next 2 days, I'm hiking Mt Whitney through the evolution of that outdoor gear. Yeah, buddy. Unpacking the innovations that turned wilderness exploration from pure suffering into an enjoyable experience. I will never go camping without this. And at the end, I'll give you my biased opinion of each piece of gear I used. I'm at the Mt Whitney trailhead, getting all my gear together. I think we're good to go. Which brings us to one of the most important pieces of gear, your pack. This is an aluminum external frame Kelty backpack from the 1970s. Bag's at 36 pounds. And if we have to poop, apparently we got to carry it out with us. So let's hope we don't have to do that. In 1952, Dick Kelty changed backpacking. This was the year he released his first backpack to the public. A few years later, in the 1960s, he added a padded hip belt, finally letting hikers carry weight on their hips instead of just crushing their shoulders. Then, in 1970, came the quick release hip belt, and that's the version I'm carrying up Mt. Whitney. Right off the bat, just some amazing views. It's gonna be pretty exposed most of this hike, so I'm gonna try to enjoy the shade while I can. First thoughts on the bag is it's kind of clunky, but to be honest, it's pretty comfortable. I'm definitely glad I changed these pads. For a 50-year-old bag, it was in great condition, but the padding on the shoulder straps had hardened over time. So I used some foam to replace it. And out of all the gear in this video, this is the only thing I had to repair. With the height of this backpack, it honestly acts as like a shade barrier for your neck. I am noticing I don't have a convenient spot for a water bottle. A couple miles in, and this is our first encounter with snow. And based off what I've been hearing, there's gonna be a lot more as we keep climbing. As I continued to ascend, I pulled out these bad boys, trekking poles. The idea was actually pretty simple. In 1974, a German company took ski pole technology and thought, what if we hiked with these? My younger self absolutely thought that trekking poles were for old people. And for nearly 2 decades, Americans didn't adopt the idea because they were viewed as canes. But by the 90s, serious hikers and outdoorsmen began to adopt them. Debate regarding the benefits of trekking poles were heavily scrutinized, but based on multiple studies, it's clear that trekking poles are beneficial for stability, balance, and reducing the load on your legs, especially during descents and when carrying a pack. This looks like a little oasis. Phew! Oh, a bag of bones. Out here, water is quite literally around every bend. And for the most part, it all looks safe to drink. But all it takes is one bag of shit to ruin your water. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be bagged. Unfortunately, contaminants can live in even the cleanest of rivers, patiently waiting to attack your weak, modern immune system. For most of human history, drinking water was a gamble, unless you boiled it. Until the 1940s, when the US Army and Harvard University developed the iodine water purification tablets. By 1960s, it was mainstream. For the first time, clean drinking water could fit in your pocket. It's been well over 30 minutes, so our water's ready. A little bit later came the neutralizer. So if I were to drink this as it is, it's a little bit tainted and it's gonna have an iodine taste. Let's give it a shot, actually. Yeah, so it tastes not as bad as like a chlorine pool, but you can tell something's off. Is add our neutralizer, shake container well, wait 3 minutes before drinking. So this one we do not have to wait very long. This one's kind of a aesthetics thing, you know? Somebody's gonna be like, I saw your squeeze is way better than iodine. Yeah, it is. But as far as biggest leap in water purification history, I would say going from boiling to actually having an on-demand resource is bigger. This is some freaking ceremonial grade water right here. Iodine is known to be effective against bacteria, viruses, and giardia, although it is not effective against Cryptosporidium, or known as crypto, which is a microscopic parasite that lives in intestines of infected humans and animals, and it enters water supplies through feces. So I guess we'll see how I feel in a couple days. So there's two options for me to camp tonight, and that's here, outpost camp, or there's trail camp, which is 2,000 feet higher than here, which means there's not going to be any trees, and I'm kind of a sucker for trees and waterfalls, so I think I'm going to camp here. I mean, look at that. Now that we've made it to camp, it's only right that I introduce you to the biggest innovations in camping gear for, well, camping. I'm talking about your home here. Tents, sleeping pads, and sleeping bags. We all need our sleep, and with how shitty I sleep in the woods, I can't imagine how awful it would have been before some of this gear. Like everything, tents have evolved over the last 100 years. First, it was canvas. Then came nylon, and the consensus between Reddit, AI, and my own personal experience is that modern day nylon is kind of king. In 1935, Wallace Carothers and his team at DuPont created a brand new material, nylon. By 1938, nylon was introduced to the public, and 2 years later, it became a nationwide obsession among the ladies.
Smoothly, gently, and evenly, you put on your cream stockings, and in any shade to match the air raid shelter or the gas mask.
But that didn't last long. In 1941, America entered World War II, and nearly all nylon production was diverted to the war effort. By the 1960s, nylon was making its way into sleeping bags and tents. And since the 70s, nylon has continued to evolve, stronger, more waterproof, and even lighter than before. We now have shelters that weigh a fraction of what hikers would have carried 50 years ago. Take this tent, for example. Super compact and just barely over a pound. Now you could argue that Dyneema is kind of cutting edge, but there's a consistent theme when it comes to outdoor gear, and that's that a lot of the innovations don't actually get adopted until 20, 30, or even 40 years after it was created. And that's for a few good reasons. The most common reason is cost. Dyneema tents are well over $800, so the general population isn't using them yet. Back in my day, we slept under the stars. I mean, that's pretty insane. Look at that. Wow, this is really uncomfortable. That's where this beauty comes in. And as you can tell from the size, it is from a very different era than our tent. But this was a camper's dream. In 1972, Thermarest changed how backpackers slept. Their self-inflating sleeping pads combined the comfort of an air mattress with the insulation and reliability of foam. For the first time, hikers didn't have to choose between comfort, warmth, and convenience. They got all three. This is the moment of truth, really. Apparently with these, you gotta inflate them a little bit. Let a little air out. Dude, this is way more comfortable than my ultralight sleeping pad. Granted, it's 3 times the size, but wow. Oh, and there's one compartment in this pack that I have not opened yet, and that's because I have stuffed our down sleeping bag in here. This bag specifically is a down Sears bag, and it's from the 1960s. There's many outdoorsmen to thank for the creation of down. Well, not really the creation, but the utilization. Warmth no longer had to weigh a ton. Coming. Oh, there's some feathers. And it's surprisingly fluffy, and it doesn't smell like smoke. I love how some things you can just tell are old. Just look at the font that they used. But I think this thing is going to be incredibly warm because unless down bags have significantly improved over the last 60 years, which maybe they have. Editing Christian here. Fundamentally, no, down has not changed, but bag design and the fill power have made bags warmer, and ultralight fabrics have made them lighter. I think this thing is going to be extremely warm because compared to my ultralight down 15-degree bag, this thing has way more insulation. At least it feels that way. I am getting awfully hungry, and I think it's time for a warm, cooked meal. But in order to do that, we need a stove. And this is where my favorite piece of gear comes in. The Optimus Sphia 123. Compact, powerful, and way less dangerous than what came before it. And this little guy was released in the 1950s and became widespread in the 60s. Cooking in the outdoors used to mean building a fire, which is a pain in the ass. Then portable stoves changed everything. And the Sphia runs on white gas, so it works great at altitude and in cold weather, which you can't really say for propane stoves. Form factor is very similar to what you'd see in a Jetboil today. All right, that took 6.5 minutes to boil. 16 ounces of water. That's respectable. Very respectable. I'm trying to eat dinner, mosquitoes are trying to eat me. I'm also gonna attempt to make some bread. Never done this before, so I don't know how it's gonna go. As far as cooking goes, I have one more surprise. This is a military mess kit. So it's essentially just a very compact cooking kit. I will say this is kind of a terrible design. Like, why is that handle so long? The mess kit dates back to the late 1800s, designed to offer a compact and lightweight cooking system for troops. Ooh, that actually looks good. Turns out, they work great for backpacking too. The only problem with these mess kits is they cook very, very unevenly because they're aluminum. Oh my God, that's delicious. I will never go camping without this. What? I'm gonna put some honey on this. In today's world, I really don't know if this is a piece of kit I would actually use, just because most meals are freeze-dried quick meals that you're just gonna really need a little pot for. Could also serve as like a great spot to cut some meat. It's a little charcuterie board out in the woods. Yeah. But really, we've come from aluminum now to titanium. Lighter, stronger, and now this is at a price point where people can afford it. But during its heyday, military surplus selling these things, this was the shit. It's only 6:30, but I have a very early morning, so I'm gonna call it soon. I think I'm gonna wake up at 1:30, start hiking up the mountain, and right now it's pretty snowed in, so I got some special gear that's gonna help me climb this sucker. I've passed a lot of people that have climbed it today. Apparently the earlier I go, the harder the ice will be, so that's kind of why I'm leaving so early. Out of all the gear I used today, I honestly didn't feel like I was missing out on anything within the last 20 years. It hasn't really changed too much. We're not really making any leaps and bounds like we used to. And honestly, the 70s was the biggest year for camping. It's 8 o'clock. I'm gonna try to get some sleep. I'm insanely comfortable right now. I'll let you know how I feel in the morning. You know what I didn't take into account was the fact that the sleeping bag might just like not work. I could be so cold tonight, but I have faith. It's 1:40. Rise and shine. Cafe. No. We have arrived at the snow, or should I say ice. I have a little bit more gear to show you. Just about the last of it. Piece of technology that has hardly changed over the last 100 years. Some crampons. This is a piece of tech that has hardly changed since 1908. Designed by British engineer and climber Oscar Eckenstein, replacing the far inferior hobnailed boots. And this was my very first time using them. And our ice axe, which I've already put this thing to work this morning. We better get moving. And due to the remaining layer of ice and snow, I had to take what they call the chute. It's an alternate route that climbs over 1,500 feet in elevation on ice and snow. It was absolutely insane. But with the crampons and ice axe, I felt glued to the mountain. All right, I think the hardest part is over. I made it up the ice chute. Now we just gotta make it to the top of Mt Whitney, which is just some switchbacks up some rocks. But the vibes are high. Everybody's pretty stoked to be up here. The old ice axe and the crampons worked phenomenally, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't get extremely nervous at a couple of times. Pretty awesome view. I made it. Yeah, buddy. And while I'm not one to typically chase peaks, this felt pretty special. I enjoyed the views, sent a message to my wife, and had some snacks. And then I set off back down the mountain. Just had someone ask me if I was carrying a lawn chair on my back, which is funny because I actually saw that comment pop up a lot during my research. I can't feel my ass, but this is really fun. This trip had everything I could have asked for. Alpine lakes, challenging terrain, beautiful mountains, and people chasing the same horizon. And somewhere along the trail, I found myself thinking about all the gear I had brought with me. Every piece started as an idea, a problem someone wanted to solve, a way to go further, carry more, sleep warmer, travel lighter. For over 100 years, we've been improving these tools, one generation building on the last. But the gear was never the point. It was what the gear made possible. A chance to step away from the noise, to see places few people ever will, to struggle a little, to be reminded how small you are and how alive you are. Because in the end, the greatest innovation wasn't the backpack, the stove, or the sleeping bag. It was all of them working together to give ordinary people access to extraordinary places. Despite all that, I'm going to give you my biased opinion of what I thought about each one of these pieces of gear, starting with the backpack. Honestly, I was very surprised. I thought it was going to be worse than what it was. And I think the best way to put it is like, I wouldn't feel bad about giving this to a friend that needed to borrow a backpack. 7 out of 10. The mess kit. It's already in the trash. That's why it's not in my hand, because I tried cleaning it and it was awful. 2 out of 10. Trekking poles. Honestly, I love these. Anytime I have a heavy pack, I bring trekking poles by choice. And when I'm using trekking poles, I feel like I have the ability to take in my surroundings more because I'm not worried about tripping because I have 4 legs. 8 out of 10. Our lightweight nylon tent. This thing is absolutely insane. 9 out of 10. Iodine, it's great because it always works. I think it's great for an emergency. I was getting really tired of the taste by the end of the 2 days, which isn't that long. 4 out of 10. Our sleeping bag, honestly, this thing is insanely comfortable. Although I slept terribly, I think it's better than any modern day sleeping pad I've brought into the backcountry, and that's probably because it's really big. 8 out of 10, only because it's just really big. That's what she said. Our Sophia stove, I honestly thought I was gonna give this one a 10 out of 10 when I first got it, just because it's so cool. The only downside is there is the potential for some leakage, which did happen to me. If it wasn't for that, I think it would be a 10 just because of the cool factor. Like if you pull this out at camp around a group of friends, you're immediately gonna be the cool guy. So for that, 9 out of 10. Our Goose Down sleeping bag. This thing was insanely warm and comfortable. The only gripe is by today's standards, it is pretty bulky. You can get them quite a bit smaller than this. I probably won't ever use this on a backpacking trip, but as far as car camping goes, I can totally see myself using this in the future. I forgot to record my rating for the sleeping bag. 8 out of 10. Lastly, I'm gonna group these together. The ice axe and the crampons were absolutely vital. I could not have done the hike without them. They kept me safe. And the fact that these haven't really changed for like 100 years just goes to show that there's not much improvement you can make to these things. 10 out of 10. And that's a wrap. See you on the next one.